Hey guys, welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Tim Nichols. We're here for part 2 of Maple Walk, and I'm telling you, this is an amazing garden. Tons of beautiful trees, plants, Japanese maples everywhere all across this garden. Get excited. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, go check that out, and come back here to watch part 2 of our tour of Maple Walk in Charlotte, North Carolina, early December. You won't believe the fall color and the amazing plants we're about to see. Come on.
As we walk through the arch was an idea from my wife. She wanted to separate what we call the upper garden from the woodland garden. So that was an expensive idea of hers.
Looks like you've got a nice emerald lace right here.
Yes, you know, emerald lace, I kid sometimes, it's the bane of my existence. It's a beautiful maple, but it grows at such unusual angles that it is a pain to prune. I'm more frustrated with this from a pruning standpoint than any other tree I've got. And we have 97 different Japanese maples in here.
I often wondered if it was found as a witch's broom on Seryu or not, because it's got a weeping shape, but it's a very unusual weeping shape. And it definitely has the leaf of Seryu.
Exactly.
Did you ever know David Sabo?
I know the name, but I don't know him.
See, he found emerald lace around Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
And he was a maple collector here, and he took scions off of the tree that he'd found and sent it to Del Laux in Oregon. And then it got into the trade through that way. So it actually came from this city we're in, and around the city. So it's about starting to fall color, very similar fall color to Seryu. And you're starting to see some of those reds come in, but I just love the leaf texture. It's very different than many of the other lace leaves.
Oh, yeah. It really is.
I'll let you lead the way.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like you've got some of the camouflage fatsia in here.
Yeah, and the deer have been nibbling. We had an 8-point buck in here the other day.
Oh.
We've got a lot of elevation change in here. From the street back where we live to the street where you parked, it's 28 feet of elevation change.
Tell me about this Dr. Heck.
Dr. Heck. This, I'm one of the few people that has this tree. Dr. Heckenblackner was the person who founded the botanical garden at the university. And the university named this tree after him, and I got one of the original plants, and they named it Dr. Heck.
Do you know why I'm looking at this tree?
Why?
Because the bark reminds me of something like an Acer truncatum. It's a more fissured bark, but it's clearly palmatum, but the bark has bark like a pictum or a truncatum on a Japanese maple with small leaves. And so that is definitely interesting. You see it happening all the way up the bark on the older tree. It's a more winter interest style, different than like a Nishikigawa or an Arakawa. It literally looks like a truncatum bark, a shantung maple.
Well, feel free to take cuttings at some point if you want to.
I'll have to come back and visit and get some cuttings from Dr. Heck. That's a neat one. That's a new one to me. And what university was it?
At
UNC Charlotte.
UNC Charlotte.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. You've got this garden full of camellias.
Yes, and as I've gotten older, my maples, as much as I love my maples, I do a lot of pruning. I cannot open my hand anymore because of the arthritis of my hand from pruning. I prune about 300 hours a year.
Wow.
And so as I get older, I said, here's a plant that looks good 12 months out of the year, blooms for 3 months, and I don't have to do much to it. So
an excellent companion plant to the Japanese.
Yeah, so they fit great.
Your maples are your bones of your garden, and you've got this blooming interest with the camellias everywhere. How many different varieties of camellia would you say you have here?
Right now we have 121 different japonicas, and we have about 14 or 15 other either sasanquas or crosses of one form or another.
Wow. Better be careful. It might become camellia walk pretty soon.
I know it's never going to be camellia, never going to be camellia walk. But it is interesting that one of the things that as a gardener you get asked a lot of questions about whether it's your maples or your camellias, and I do know more than some of the people walking up and down the street. But I tell people I'm far from being an expert on these things. I'm a gardener who happens to have a lot of things.
So I'm seeing something really cool. Looks like you got from us a few years ago.
Yes, I did get that from you.
Let's step on over there if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Guys, we're here with Acer Calum. This is a rare Chinese maple in section palmata that has the unusual leaf from Yunnan, China. You rarely see this tree in the nursery trade. It has some new growth to it. It almost looks like a Fruit Loop. It's very subtropical, which is really unusual. And it's definitely really cool to see this here in the landscape here at Maple Walk.
No, it is one, I think as it matures, is really going to get a lot of interest.
I remember when you got this tree because it was one of the last Acer Calum I had at the time. But it has a real unusual twist down here at the trunk, but as it ages, it adds a lot of character to it.
Yeah. So, no, I really find it interesting, and it's sat for a long time without doing much.
Yeah.
And just the last couple of years, it's starting to amount to something.
Hey,
I'm
excited to see this thing grow here in Charlotte.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
Wow, this is a beautiful specimen. I love the shape on this. Which lace leaf is this?
This is Lionhard, and one of the things I particularly like about it is the way it grows in layers, almost like a cake. Part of it's pruning, but a lot of it is natural tendency. And in fact, Matt, when he was here the last time, I had a big camellia sitting here.
Yeah.
And Matt said, "Oh, don't mess with this tree." And he wanted me to cut the camellia down, and I said, I compromised. I cut it way back so the Lionheart could do its thing.
Well, this is a beautiful specimen. Lionheart is a selection from New Zealand. It's a selection by Stepping Stone Nursery. At least they're credited with introducing this selection. It gets big quick for a lace leaf. It does have that tiered effect, and it goes typically to some nice oranges to reds in the fall. So it is a very different lace leaf with a more open structure. And that makes this tree really special and gives you a little bit more to play with if you're actually going and pruning and doing the work that you're doing.
Right. This conifer here is one that is different than it's supposed to be, the conifer people tell me. This guy is Tansu, a cryptomeria that if you see it in the catalogs, it's a lot squattier than this one.
Yeah.
But I didn't know any better when I planted it, and I planted it in a fair amount of shade, so it's been trying to reach for the sun, and it's a lot more interesting this way than the ones I see in the catalog.
I like the Japanese cryptomeria. They can perform well in a slightly shaded environment with the camellias and the Japanese maples. I mean, the Japanese cedars do so well in this environment.
And this one's got really harsh foliage to it. People reach for it and think it's going to be tender, and it's not. This is one of my little experiments here. I decided that I was going to take Florida Sunshine and see how much shade it would take and still give me some pop in a shady area. And I think I'm going to add more because it seems to be doing just fine.
Nice. Wow, I love this Bosque Glory right here above you.
Yes, it's really done well in this spot. And it's got the green mist down here that I've pruned to sort of flow down the bank here.
Wow. Now, green mist, that's actually an introduction by Red Maple Nurseries. So this is the same guy who introduced Emperor One.
Oh, wow.
Actually introduced Shayna, named after Billy Schwartz's daughter, and introduced so many awesome trees in the trade. And green mist doesn't get enough love. I mean, it is beautiful, as you see here with this yellow fall color. Wow. Is this Canar Pygmy or Tiny Tim?
It is. It's Canar Pygmy.
Wow. That is looking amazing. And is this Seka Yatsubusa?
Yes, I believe it is. Let's look. But I'm pretty sure you're right. It is.
Oh. Now, I love Seka Yatsubusa because it has this unusual growth. I mean,
Yeah.
Acer, or Acer, as it's pronounced, supposed to be pronounced, basically means the definition of a maple is that you have opposite buds.
Okay.
Well, this breaks that definition because you have this unusual clustered growth.
Right.
And so it just gives something a little bit different out there, but it makes a good mid-sized tree out here and has that sort of tightly layering kind of habit because of that unusual bud structure. Now, the Kunara Pygmy, that was found at Kunara Springs Restaurant in Australia. AJT is the same guy who introduced Peaches and Cream,
Oh, wow.
the same guy who introduced and named one of the yellow snake bark selections, Fairy Light, Acer Japonicum Fairy Lights. He was sitting down at this restaurant, and it's got like this arboretum around it, and he spotted there's a witch's broom in it. And that's where it got the name of Kunara Pygmy.
Wow.
But I mean, how old is that Kunara Pygmy? 20 years old?
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell it's got some size to it, but man, that thing is beautiful. Every time I see a witch's broom like that Kunara Pygmy though, I always look for seed. I've found seed a few times on a Tiny Tim. I've never seen seed on Kunara Pygmy. And they say if you found seed, like they did at the J.C. Rouston, like those big witch's broom
Right.
seedlings from pines, 50% of the seedlings would have characteristics of being tight and dense and compact. And so I'm always looking around when I see a witch's broom that's big like that Kunara Pygmy. It's like, man, that thing's growing vigorously. Any seed on it? Because you never know what genetics you might unlock from looking through seedlings. Wow. Is this Kohime?
Yes, it is. 14 feet from tip to tip. Yes.
Have you measured it lately? Because it looks like it may be a little bit larger.
From this tip. And the funny part is that when I planned this, and I planted the big maples in here, it was pre-internet days, and I knew almost nothing. And there were other things planned in this area that got sacrificed because this became dominant and was far more important than the things that were planted around it. And now I do have to control it. Now, for years, I just let it grow, and I do let it grow that direction, but I have to prune it a little bit. The one thing that I don't like about it is I prune it on my back. It takes me about 2.5 to 3 hours every year on my back. I do it a half hour at a time so that I don't need back surgery. But I'll take 20% or more out of it, crossing branches inside. But as you well know, it doesn't want to get tall. People say, oh, you're lowering it. No, that's the way it grows.
Well, I love the spring time with Kohime. When it emerges in the spring and you get the purple borders around the edges.
And it comes out early. This is one of the first ones to leaf out for me.
It's simply amazing. And to me, it's one of the most beautiful trees in the springtime. But the shape, it breaks what you think of a Japanese maple. It's not a lace leaf, and it has this wide spreading shape. It just gives a unique texture in the garden.
You know, we have professional photographers that buy passes to photograph here. And in the winter, once it loses all its leaves, photographers love to photograph the structure of the tree because it's really interesting to see the structure without the leaves.
Yeah. Oh my. This is the tree Matt did a cultivar highlight with on Aushim Mo.
He did.
That is such a unique specimen. I mean, I love Aushim Mo as well. I mean, the thing about Aushim Mo that makes it so interesting is how the leaves just sort of curl upwards.
Oh, yes.
And
sort of a cupping of the leaf.
Yeah, it gives a good texture in the garden. It typically gives you some good yellows to oranges in the fall. But it truly is when you see a specimen like this and all leaves are curled upwards, it really is just a work of art. I mean, there's not a lot of other selections that do this. I know in a 1 gallon or a 3 gallon, sometimes people will actually come by the nursery and like pick up a hose or a water, water, because it looks almost like it's dried up.
And we have people come through the garden who say, does that tree need water? And I said, no, it's fine.
But it is such a beautiful tree, and you've got a gorgeous specimen. This is one of the prettiest specimens I've seen on a Aushim Mo.
The many hours of pruning.
I can imagine. Now, this is a maple I love. I recognize it instantly. This is Kikuchi J. Just starting to light up a little bit in the fall. It's a selection from Japan that I was told that if you look through the seedlings, the seeds of Kikuchi J, that you can find a wide diversity of traits, from variegated types to weepers, lace leaves, to uprights. And the thing is Kikuchi J has typically just some amazing fall colors of yellows and oranges. And so it's always interesting, what could you find through the genetics of Kikuchi J? That's the only thing that I'm always interested in.
No, I'm liking the way it's starting to turn now. It's a pretty tree. As we pass it.
Hey, what is that? Is that? Oh, that's the Hanama Nishiki earlier. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was getting sidetracked by the little bit of small leaves.
No, this is Don Egolf. This is a red bud, a Chinese red bud that blooms from the trunk all the way up. People will come by and think these are wounds and these are flower buds. And one of the great things about this particular red bud is it's sterile. And for those who've grown red buds, sometimes the bane of people's existence is all the seedlings that come up off their red buds.
Well, when you see this in the early spring, and it's just that pink, purple, red color of the blooms coming across the trunk, it's really showy.
And we have one of my rescue trees there. Took it off a trash heap.
Oh, goodness. This is a beautiful red upright. Which selection is this?
This is Emperor 1, and it has got some size to it. One of the things that I really like to point out to people when they're touring the garden is, and especially the ones that are looking to buy their first or second Japanese maple, is be sure you choose a maple that's appropriate for where you're going to plant it, because maples can get very large, and please don't put this right next to your house.
It's true. I mean, Emperor 1 gets out there quickly. It leaves out 2 weeks later, so avoids later threats of frost. Holds its color really well. People don't understand the evaluation process that even Dick Wolf went through to select this. And this is the process that people do when they're looking for different Japanese maples. He went through almost 200,000 red seedlings.
Oh, God.
And through those, he found Emperor 1, Moonfire, Red Baron, Hub's Red Willow, and a few others. But this was the winner of those. I mean, you really have to evaluate trees and understand which is better and why, and understand why this needs a place in the nursery trade. And he really did that with Emperor 1, because it's a winner all the way around, because it can handle late frost, it can handle high heat, it can hold its color well, and it's also known as Red Emperor.
Interesting.
Now, what's the smallest selection we've got here behind us?
This is Hanami Nishiki, and I love to point this out to people because indeed it has what people think of as a maple leaf. It's got that shape, and yet the leaves are so tiny. Now, the one thing I warn people about, this tree is a bear to prune. It's very twiggy, and in order for it to look halfway decent for me, I have to spend a lot more time on it. But having said that, I wouldn't give it up for anything. It's like the problem child I have, but I'm not going to give it up.
Now, there's two different forms of Hanama Nishiki in the trade. One looks just like your Kohime.
Oh.
It has that similar wide shape. And the other one is this one here. And this is the one I really like a lot. Sometimes I call this the Tokyo Yatabusa-like form. because there's another cultivar called Tokyo Yatabusa that has a very similar form to this. And this is my favorite form of a Namanishki with the small leaves. Years ago, I was down at Bill and Kristen Taylor's in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and I spotted a witch's broom on his version of a Namanishki that looks similar to this. And it was the first witch's broom I ever found.
I've never spotted a witch's broom on any of my maples so far, and I keep, looking and seeing if I get one.
We'll keep an eye out today and see if we see anything.
Yeah. Yes, as we've had a lot of visitors this fall, people comment on the blanket of leaves, the colors of the maples. As we approach Baldsmith here on the right.
That's underrated for fall color.
It is, and it's a really nice tree. And this one has got some age on it. This tree's probably 20 years old or so.
I like it how you just get some of that like, pink, orange, red kind of color.
Yeah.
Which is nice in the fall. And people always listen to the MrMaple Show and follow us because we often give so much history behind the plants. And in our cultivar highlight of Baldsmith, Matt jokingly, because there's some people that just copy us on the different YouTube channels, he says, it was found by Bartholomew Smith, who was a blacksmith, and he was bald. That's not true at all. Not true at all. But that's just our running joke on Baldsmith.
Well, when you say, funny stories about things, I've got a paper bark maple up there, and be careful on who you pay attention to for your information. When I bought my paper bark maple, the person who sold it to me told me that the Native Americans had used the bark the way the Egyptians used papyrus. I told this story for 15 years and then discovered it didn't arrive into this country until 1897.
I know. Matt and I actually went to, you can actually go to the Arnold Arboretum and see they've got two of the original Acer Grishams still alive today at the campus there.
Yes.
And
so be careful your source when you're quoting somebody.
I know. E.H. Wilson brought that over long after that.
Long after that.
This is a beautiful selection here. This is Wunishki. So I'll tell you, my theory is that Seryu is actually a seedling from either Wunishki or Murahibari. Both have similar leaf structures, slightly divided leaves, and definitely some very interesting, strong growth habits. Good fall colors as well.
There are 7 trees in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 here that I bought the same day. And I bought them from the nursery here, and the guy mispriced them. And I was at the nursery, and a truck came in from the West Coast, and this is long before I knew you guys. And I saw them. I was at the nursery. They came in. The truck comes in. They're all banded up, and Jim, the guy who ran the nursery, I said, "Don't sell any of these trees until I get a chance to see them." And so days pass, and again, this was pre-internet, so all the information I had was from the Vertrees book, and he finally gave me a list of what came in. There were a bunch of onesies, and I said, "Jim, price them for me." And he said, "Well, I don't know." And then eventually, 3 days later, I kept telling him, "You've got a willing buyer." And so I found 7 I liked, and thinking I might get 2 of them. And he gave me a price that was ridiculous, so I bought all 7.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And this one is your Villa Toronto.
Yeah, it's my Villa Toronto.
From Italy. We actually had our...
And that sucker's been there over 20 years.
Henderson County actually had their sister seedling from Italy come visit our nursery. Because, they were visiting local businesses, and the sister seedling for Hendersonville, North Carolina is right near Villa Toronto.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really cool getting to have them at the nursery and showing them around. But beautiful Linerlobum.
And one of my favorite forms here, this is Fascination, and I just love the structure of it. The times we get snow or ice, Photographers love to come and photograph it with snow and ice on it. It's another example of why Japanese maple should look good 12 months out of the year, because structure is so important on the maples.
I love that many of your trees don't have your traditional street tree style. A lot of people will take a Japanese maple and prune it to one central leader, up to 8-10 foot tall,
Yeah.
and then let them start branching out from there. And you miss getting a structure like you do on this Fascination.
Well, this is another vantage point of seeing one of the beautiful red maples, the Osakazuki. This is a showpiece in the garden every year. You know it's going to look good.
It's an anchor.
Yeah.
And the fall color is late. The thing that I love about Osakazuki, and it always confuses people, is you often get that darker red color first.
And then it brightens up.
It brightens up.
Yeah.
And it confuses me because often with some of the maples, I think I've lost the fall color when it goes to the dark color.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get good fall color this year. And then all of a sudden, the lights just turns on Osakazuki and it just brightens up the garden. Tom, I really appreciate you letting us come by and visit today. Your garden is just such a labor of love. You can see all the hard work that you put in here. What's the best way for people to learn more about Maple Walk?
Well, we have a website, which is maplewalkgarden.com, but you can also find us on Instagram and Facebook under Maple Walk Garden.
And this place is open for visitors, if I'm correct.
It's open 365 days a year during daylight hours. We do tours, and people can contact us for tours. And we do about 50 tours a year.
So Maple Walk is about 2 hours from the nursery. So if you're coming to visit us for an open house, this is an awesome place to stop by. Or if you're just happen to be traveling around the Charlotte, North Carolina area, this place is fun, and there's something to see each and every season. You've got some hellebores that are about to be blooming during the winter. You've got just beautiful camellias everywhere, and then the maples really steal the show.
Yes, the maples were my original passion, and that's the reason it's Maple Walk. We've got 1,300 different plants in here, but maples were the thing that really got us going.
Well, thanks you all so much for watching today. Make sure you subscribe here on the Mr. Maple Show. We put out daily content on Japanese maples and gardening. We're also on your favorite podcast platform, the Mr. Maple Show there as well. Take care, God bless, and have a great day.